Good evening, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to welcome all of you to the special gathering as we celebrate the launch of The Phoenix Lecturer, a powerful memoir by the eminent Malaysian author Loga Narayanasamy. Loga Narayanasamy, an Ipoh-based English lecturer with nearly 2 decades of experience, holds degrees in linguistics and literature from the University of Hawaii and Digital Diploma from ELT Academy, Singapore. His memoir, The Phoenix Lecturer, an English teacher's journey of rising from ashes to inspire, chronicles his transformation from a high-profile educator in 2010 to overcoming life-threatening struggles between 2018 and 2020. Originally a personal journal, the book delves into resilience, personal growth, and the power of storytelling, inspiring readers to embrace their own narratives. To explore this journey, today we have a very distinguished panel. We have amongst us Professor Ashok Vishwanathan. Ashok Vishwanathan is a national and international award-winning filmmaker with more than 150 film projects to his credit, including feature films, documentaries, shorts, and television shows. He is also a former professor and dean at SRFTI Kolkata. A big hand for Mr. Vishwanathan. Next, we have with us writer, educator, and social activist Saira Shah Halim. A traveler and TEDx speaker, she is a regular speaker on national television channels like CNN News 18, Times Now, Republic, as well as major literary events across the country and abroad. A voracious reader and prolific writer, she writes a column for India Today and has also written for the print, ABP, Gulf News, and the Sunday Guardian. A theatre enthusiast, Saira is also the recipient of the prestigious Agha Hashar Kashmiri Award. Her critically acclaimed short film Ek Khas Admi can be viewed on YouTube. A big hand for Ms. Saira Shah Halim. Writer, professor, and critic Dr. Julie Mehta has a PhD degree from Department of English, University of Toronto. She conceptualized and taught the Chancellor's endorsed course of Asian cultures and literatures in Canada at the University of Toronto for many years. A specialist in post-colonial, feminist studies, and world and diasporic literatures, Julie Mehta is Mary H. Betty and David Chu Fellow from the University of Toronto. She was also named one of the 16 most influential South Asian in Canada for a translation of Tagore's Dagor. Dr. Mehta is the author of Dance of Life, a seminal study of the resurrection of Cambodian culture and arts post-genocide, and the best-selling biography of Hun Sen, Strongman of Cambodia, about the life of Khmer Prime Minister. She is a literary columnist from the Telegraph T2 and conceptualizes and anchors the Bengal Book Club every month. Next, we have with us Dr. Chandrani Biswas. Dr. Biswas is an associate professor in the Department of English at St. Xavier's College. She served as the head of department from 2029 to 2013. Her research focuses on women's writing in African and African American tradition, black feminism, modern fiction, and 19th century Bengali literature. Dr. Biswas has presented papers at numerous seminars and conferences and authored several articles in prestigious journals and anthologies. She has delivered lectures on diverse topics such as Austen's fictional narrative, Victorian women's literature, post-colonial literatures, and African American women's writings. She has also been a guest lecturer at JNU New Delhi and University of Calcutta. Currently, Professor Biswas is a visiting faculty at St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. So, before we begin with the session, we would officially call upon stage Shudipto from Exceller Books to felicitate the panelists. First, we start with Dr. Shudipto to felicitate Professor Ashok Vishwanathan. Dr. Julie Mehta. Please put your hands together. Ms. Shaida Shah Halim. Dr. Chandrani Biswas. And finally, the author of the Phoenix Lecturer, and then now it's the moment that we have all been waiting for, the official unveiling of the book. I would request Shudipto from Exceller Books and the panelist and the author to join us unveiling the book, The Phoenix Lecturer. Please put your hands together for the official unveiling of the book. I now hand over the session to Anjita from Exceller Books.
Thanks, Ritlina. A very good evening to all of you. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to this special discussion on the book, The Phoenix Lecturer, an English teacher's journey of rising from ashes to inspire. I think memoirs have a distinct power. It has a unique power, because they allow us to step into someone else's life and, witness their transformation. So today, we would explore the journey behind the book and also look at some broader impacts that memoirs have on our life, on society and literature, and also ponder on lessons that we can learn, such deep personal narratives. We have a fantastic panel with us today. We have distinguished author, academician, and also a social thinker and critic. So they will contribute and they will bring in unique perspectives on this book. First, I will open the discussion by delving into the inspirations behind this book. And I'll come straight up to the author. And first of all, many congratulations for writing and going an extra mile publishing this book. And it is deeply personal. Yeah. So I would request you to share with us what inspired you to document your journey and also tell us a bit about the journey which has, metamorphosed you into the victorious man you are today.
Good evening, namaste, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. I was just 2 days ago I was sitting in the boarding lounge in Kuala Lumpur International Airport, and I was reading some quotes by this great Zen Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh, and he said, people say that walking on water is a miracle, but he said, but I think mankind living peacefully on the earth is a miracle. And I think traveling 1600 miles from Kuala Lumpur to Kolkata and to be sitting with all these scholars and wonderful audience, eager minds, is a miracle. So, to Anjita's question, I cannot be too quick with that question because it's a very broad question. My reason for writing this, okay. First, if I'm going to talk about this, I need to talk about the first book I started writing in 2017, when everything was going wonderful in my life. I had a great profession as a senior English lecturer at this prominent English college, Cosmo Point College of Technology. And also at that time, I received my certificate from the Ministry of Human Resource as a corporate and motivational trainer and speaker. So business was going good, and my job was going great. And my family and we bought a dream home and moved into our dream home. And it was like a fairy tale. It was like life was so wonderful. But then something got me carried away. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was ego, or maybe it was too much. I was chasing after my dreams too much. I was trying to analyze life too much, that I had, during that time I befriended the manager of my college, and we were friends for 7 years, and I can't call him friends today because I only came to know him after 7 years of knowing the man, and I realized that I did not really know that man. There were so many aspects about him, a complex character, a mysterious character, and I failed to see that side of him. So if there's one fundamental theme in this book that my students told me, sir, I think this is like, don't judge the book by the cover. That's what this theme is all about. So I judged this man too quickly, and I thought, this man, it's going to make a difference in my life. And I just forgot, at the split second, I forgot that I was the one who's going to make a difference in my life. So I put my passion, my dreams, onto the hands of this man who had a kind of a cunning self-interest and selfish motives. So then, I don't know what happened at the time in 2018, and I was just reacting to whatever circumstances, the negative circumstances that overwhelmed me. And then one thing led to the other, and life started to fall apart, and I started to behave in an eccentric ways, and my speech and everything sort of went haywired, and I wasn't focusing on my teaching. Everything, every talent, every single skill I had acquired over many years right in front of me, began to crumble. Right in front of my eyes. So I did not realize what was going on. So in 2017, I was super ambitious that I wanted to write this memoir, the first memoir. It's titled A Pilgrimage Through Paradise. It's the life and journey of a Malaysian student living in Hawaii, the struggles and the journey that I went through to get my academic career in Hawaii. So I was writing about that, and halfway when this incident happened from 2018, my life started to fall apart, and everything started going crazy. And so 2 years of my life just completely, I lost control of everything. I forgot who I was. I forgot who was next to me, the loved ones, family members, nobody. I couldn't recognize anyone, and so on. Then after the 2 years journey, through the help of a number of people, I recovered. So when I recovered, when I came back home in 2020, that's when I got an inspiration. My mentor, Dr. William Stimson, I met this man in Taiwan in 2007 when I was studying Chinese and teaching English to the children over there. And so I met Dr. Stimson. So he was reading my posts in Facebook, and he said, every time I read your writing, it looks like you are just venting. You're just complaining that this man did this to me, this man did that to me. And he said, I want to know the story. Tell me the story. I think you have enough materials for a novel. So he kind of hinted that. I never dreamt that I would write a book about what happened to me during these 2 years and turn it into a memoir and so on. So then he gave me 6 questions. He said, who was that man? why did you befriend him, and why were you vulnerable? Why you? Not the other lecturers, not your other colleagues, but why you? So I want to know those questions. So I focused, and meditated on those questions, and they became my beacon for me to write this memoir. Yeah, answer the questions. Yeah.
So that is actually wonderful. How just one person asked you these questions, and in order to answer to that person, a whole book came out, and it came out wonderfully.
Yes, actually, Dr. Stimson wasn't just asking for himself, he was motivating me in his own way.
Yes.
Yeah, he would never tell me do this or do that, but he was just hinting, you have something inside of you. Tell your story. But he didn't say specifically, like, tell it to me. Write a novel about what happened to you, who you are. Write yourself, don't write yourself into the ego Loga, but write yourself out of the bigger Loga. So he gave me something to focus upon. I think without those fundamental and esoteric questions, I wouldn't have written this book. Yeah.
That is wonderful. As you said that, so the first thing that one notices about this book is the title. It's a very intriguing, catchy title, The Phoenix Lecturer. And it encompasses your two identities. You rose like a phoenix, and you are a lecturer. You have been a lecturer throughout your life. So that is, can you please comment on this, the title of the book? Why did you choose this title? Because you already said that it was originally supposed to be something else,
yes.
And then you
Yes.
decided upon this one.
Yes, when I started writing the memoir, I titled it something called White Chrysanthemum, and a white chrysanthemum in Chinese culture, it represents death and dying. And when I started writing this memoir, I was only thinking about death, that I was about to die, and my life just, went off track, and so it's all the negative thoughts that was overwhelming my mind at that time. I was thinking about dying and death, and I almost died twice, 2 years back, and so I titled, and then the subtitle was The Life and Journey of an English Teacher. So I discussed it with a colleague, and the colleague said, I think it's kind of too vague, that title. Come up with something more powerful, more concrete, like captivating for this novel, and for the memoir. So he said, why not? Because you died. It's symbolic. This title is very symbolic, because I died when I lost all my aspirations. I was blaming this man. He took everything away from me. I lost my aspirations. I lost my dreams. Everything that I worked for, everything that I acquired, everything was snatched away from me, and I was blaming him, and I should have died. There's no point living. When I came to that stage, and so I was only thinking about dying, that I could have died. But when after discussing with this former colleague, and came up with this title, and he said, I'm sorry, it was actually a former student that brainstormed with me on the title. So this student is from Johor Bahru, actually. So she said, sir, how about this title? Because this says a lot about how you overcame the ordeal or the crisis that you went through. When we think of something getting burned, it gets burned up and it turns into ash, and most people think it's gone, it's over, it's ash, there's nothing left there. But then all of a sudden, a phoenix, when we think of phoenix, we conceptualize this phoenix as a mythical bird, and it just comes out of nowhere from the ash. So I died and I came back to life, and it says a lot about that I actually came back to life like a phoenix. And lecturing, because I got my teaching career back, and that defined me, so I got myself back in that sense.
Thank you, Mr. Narayanasamy. So speaking of phoenix, in the same context, I would like to invite Professor Vishwanathan's perspective on it. And what do you think it takes to rebuild one's life after one has faced significant setbacks in life?
Thank you for the question. I'd first like to congratulate Loga Narayanasamy with whom I share many things. Like Narayanasamy was my grandfather's name, which is also borne by my father. We're both from a Tamil background. He was called N. Vishwanathan, Narayanaswamy Vishwanathan. And I had another uncle in Malaysia, so I have an idea about Malaysian life and how there are South Indians and Chinese and Malays, and a very interesting mix. And also because you are, once again, adding to Julie's collection of diasporic literature in a sense, and post-colonial also. So we fulfill both the categories. More than that, you seem to have actually created a genre for which I need to congratulate you. This is a memoir, but it also reads like a very well-fashioned story. So it is, in a sense, documentary masquerading as fiction. So you could read it like a story, but actually it is true. It's autobiographical. So it's a new genre altogether. Like we have a syncretic religion that Akbar tried to create, Din-e-Ilahi. Similarly, you have created a genre in which you're speaking from the heart. You're not afraid to do that. So kudos to you for that. You're speaking of your own foibles. You're willing to admit that you made a mistake or more than one mistake. But at the same time, you're telling the story in such an interesting way, and it reads very well. Very, very interesting, And the other thing is that the ambience throughout, the milieu that you create, when you go into the room and give your resume and you wait there and someone goes over your resume and before you get the job actually, it brings back a lot of memories. You can identify with things like that. All of this is extremely important, and of course the fact of it being called the Phoenix lecturer is significant, extremely significant, because not many people can really come back, as it were. There are a few who become role models. For example, a very common example, I know that cricket may not be right up your street, but we had a cricketer called Sourav Ganguly who was really down and out from being the captain of the Indian cricket team. Mind you, not the Bengal cricket team, but the Indian cricket team. He was cast out, but he came back. There are such incidents, all kinds of incidents. And we know that even the great Albert Einstein in school had flunked an exam and then became Einstein. More close to what Julie's preferences are, Michel Foucault submitted his PhD, thesis, dissertation more than once because there was a professor there who was just not allowing it. Bruce Perrin, if I am not mistaken. So there are very few examples, and to actually chronicle that is a great thing. And of course, it's very interesting. For those who've read the book, of course, you can read it again. For those who haven't, from what little he said, you must be dying to know what exactly this manager, the big guy, did to actually possess you. So in a sense, it's also like Faust, Goethe's Faust, based on Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. You actually sold your soul to the devil, if I may use that analogy. So all in all, extremely interesting, resonant, and congratulations to Exceller Books also for actually having the power and the boldness and the foresight to publish a book like this. And as she very beautifully put it, you're walking the extra mile to have it published. So all in all, it's a very interesting book, one that will set you thinking, that will leave a lot of open-ended areas which we can discuss and deliberate upon.
Thank you, Professor. I think Professor Vishwanathan has already opened a very extensive premise for the discussion of this book, The Phoenix Lecturer. So I would come to Dr. Mehta, and my question is, taking cue from because since we are already talking about the literary aspect of the book, so In what way do you think memoirs like the Phoenix Lecturer contribute to the contemporary literary discussions on identity and struggle?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Anjita and Shudipto, for being frontrunners always and opening up so many windows for new writers. And especially Loga, who I've been talking to for a while. I think he has lit the spark already amongst those of us who've read the book. Thanks from the start to Ashok, because he is someone who I feel always opens the casements for me. And he has guessed absolutely right that what Loga is doing is not just bearing his soul and having the courage to, as in many memoirs, having the courage to express, look, this is where I went wrong. And not just for students, but for teachers as well. I think I learned and I relived my years at the University of Toronto. Now, no aspersions being cast here. But going back to Anjita and your question, our Indian scheme of things in university, cover the syllabus ta shesh karo. You know, it doesn't matter what your inner problems are. My first day at work at the University of Toronto as an instructor stroke professor was to learn that my office hours were not only going to be discussing the text, but the problems that the students faced. Korean students, for instance, we are talking about a multicultural society like Malaysia. These students came and they were in a psychosomatic situation. 6 courses. My parents want me to finish my undergraduate in half the time that is required. How will I do it, ma'am? And you had to think on your feet, because very smart minds, very curious minds, but they did not have the agency to decide how they were going to get that degree. So going back to both the questions, I would say that this book does not only excel as a memoir to tell us how memoirs often leave out material. You can't have everything in an autobiography or a memoir because of constraints of time, constraints of space, and maybe even with some publishers. We know when T.S. Eliot was working for Faber and Faber, he often made writers today who are so famous rewrite their work, because if it doesn't suit the market, but I think this will suit the market immensely well. I will come back when we have a second round, but I also would like very much to congratulate Loga on bringing Mr. Dr. Carl Gustav Jung to the table today. He begins his book with this beautiful quote from Jung, and that should set us thinking for the rest of the discussion which Ashok so deftly opened up. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. So we can blame fate. This is what Loga was talking about. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. One becomes enlightened not by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Imagine the nut that he has captured by putting this quotation up front. You have to encounter your fears, your regrets, and your deeds. That's the only way you face reality and make the real so true that you can move forward only when you face that reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta, for your unique perspective, and indeed it was quite insightful. In fact, the book is so multifarious and it has embraced so many issues within the precinct of the book that it's totally mind-boggling, I would say. And my question to Dr. Bishwas is, as Professor Vishwanathan already talked about the comeback story. So taking cue from there, I would ask you, why do you think people are so fond of such stories of reinvention, you know, and what it takes to reinvent oneself?
Hello, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Congratulations. As a great note of congratulations to the author. Feel really delighted to be there with such an esteemed panel, Ashokda, and our fellow Zavarian, about whom we are very proud, and Dr. Mehta and you. I would like to also thank Dr. Sudipto Ghosh. I would like to thank Onjita for their relentless efforts to unfold the unknown and to bring to the fore the many unheard voices and opening up new vistas. Now, I have a few observations to make, and that is, it is indeed a fascinating book. I could manage to read till 250 PDF. So, and then after, yes, but I'm in the process now, and I'm into postmodernism and postcolonialism as well as feminism. So what I thought, no, I'm not talking about feminism over here. Stuart Hall, in Cultural Identity and Diaspora, had said that identity is not a stable category as we would like to think, not a monolithic thing, but constantly in the process of changing, you know, shifting terrains. And you have talked about, in a very passionate, self-exploratory manner, the way in which you have constantly talked about the crisis to meet with different identities, different voices. You don't think that it's one voice of Loga which is speaking. There's a polyphonic orchestration of many voices. And I recall Mikhail Bakhtin's Rabelais and the World, where he discusses the capacity of chaotic pleasure, of the medieval carnival to challenge the authority. No major one discourse. And as Derek Walcott says, that every art is militant. You write back. So I think that you are rewriting yourself a lot. And being in so many places, different countries, the different challenges, you also meet with the crisis of multinational citizenship, solidarities beyond territorial and nation-state boundaries. That was really very fascinating, because you always seem to suffer, as in diasporic literature, suffer in the positive sense from the insider-outsider dichotomy, from displacement, dislocations, from deterritorialization and re-territorialization. So, this identity crisis, now we all suffer from identity crisis, and that is true. Even when we apparently seem to be in a very stable condition, we are not. Because we rarely respond to those squeaking dark voices inside, or do not pay attention to those. But this is really the search for a new voice to emerge out of these many voices. And you are in line, as far as the memoir is concerned, you are in line with people like Sappho, and a long time back they used to write, or Daniel Defoe in Robinson Crusoe, and Moll Flanders, and the portrait of the artist as a young man, James Joyce, and of course Anne Frank, certainly Anne Frank. And I remember Buchi Emecheta, a Nigerian British immigrant novelist, in her Second Class Citizen, she's talking about the struggles of how she came from Nigeria, and she's trying to publish her books, and the kind of difficulties that she faced. So this is just fascinating, especially the many voices, right? And that you are using art in a militant way to write back. Right? That's wonderful. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah, so I think I will come back to this context, because it is we have actually opened up so many contexts for the book, spiritual and then literary. So the discussion is really ripe. But I also want to bring in a social aspect here. And my question to Ms. Halim is, we have seen that, or we have also heard from Mr. Loga that throughout this journey, there are different people who have supported him, and also people who have turned out to be harmful associations. So there are toxic as well as healthy relationships in this book, in this journey. So how do you think these relationships or people surrounding us can shape the trajectory of our lives?
So, it's famously said, and I get by with a little help from my friends, right? It's a very famous adage or quote or whatever one can say. So, the issue is, when people look at life from the prism of this is black, this is white. So I always tell people that life is neither black nor white. It's, a shade of gray. So I think every human being, end of the day, however pious the person is, however good, there are certain, I would not say gray, but there are different colors, So you can't exactly, say this person is black or white, because they would be shades of gray. And I think that's what makes a person human. And that's what makes a person believable. Because if you are like a demigod, then it's, too unbelievable for the person to be human. So yes, the kind of people we meet also shapes the trajectory of our lives, because if you are a positive person, you would negate the negatives that have happened, and concentrate and pay stress on the positives, because the glass is always half full and it's not half empty. So if you would ask me how I would like to go through that, I think you've written a lot in the book about how people have let you down. There's a certain chapters. Trust me, there's not a single person in the room who can say with confidence and say that I have not been let down. We all have been betrayed. We all have been backstabbed. There've been people who have done that to us, ugly things to us. But the idea is rising, like the phoenix, as the title of your book says. The phoenix lecture. It's looking at the brighter side, and I think that is a wonderful coping mechanism, or whatever one can call it, by looking at the positives and just negating the negativity. I think that is more good, that is better. But in your memoir, what is interesting is that you mentioned both. There are people who handheld you, there are people who let you down, and I think that is what makes the memoir so believable. Without naming the person, but I read a memoir of a very, very, legendary film actor of yesteryears, of the black and white cinema. And he's known as a huge superstar. So I was reading his autobiography, and I did not find anything interesting, because they just mentioned his awards and laurels, and they never talked about, the times where he stumbled, the times when he fell, or the times probably where he made a mistake. And then I read another biography of a very famous actor who happens to be related to me as well. His autobiography memoir was much more believable, because he spoke about his trajectory early on in life, the mistakes he made, the redeeming factor in his life. Because if there are going to be mistakes, I think there will be redemption. They will also be redeeming. But if you're going to just say, oh, life is like hunky-dory and I've not made mistakes, I haven't stumbled, that's not believable. That doesn't connect you to human. You will read it like, oh, very good, you received this award. But we are more interested to know about you as a person. What was your journey like? Your awards are all interesting. But what makes your life's trajectory more interesting is that you were honest enough to tell you, yeah, I dabbled, say, in, these gang wars, and there were these people, doing heroin and hard drugs and all of that. So that, I think, makes it more believable. And it kind of generates interest in the reader, that rather than saying, oh, I got this award and I got this, a professorship in this college and this institution, then it becomes boring. So I think when there's this touch of humanness, I would say, and there's this touch of humility also, and when you are a human being, that's what makes the whole book interesting.
Thank you, Ms. Halim. So, speaking of truthfulness as a major quality of a memoir, actually, I would like to ask Mr. Loga this question, that how did you actually manage to blend truth and fiction in your book? Because you are the writer, so you have the primary responsibility to be truthful to your life, because you are writing an account of your journey. At the same time, you are also an author and you are endowed with imagination. You are a prolific writer in that sense. So how did you manage to put how much dose of truth you would put in your book? And because you have mentioned that you have fictionalized, you felt the need of fictionalizing certain portions, certain places and names of people. So how did you balance these two things here?
Yeah, it's okay. Again, I can't give a quick answer for that, because it took a long process actually to work on that. And well, it's all up to the author, how the author approaches his or her memoir. And so you're telling the truth, but at the same time, you don't want to say too much of it, because otherwise it become kind of, like you're complaining, but this happened to me, that happened to me. So, and also the people that I talk about, they're very near to me actually, because it's just 10-15 minutes drive away, and I'm talking about them, sometimes in a very explicit way, like the gossip gang and all that, and how they isolated me. They kind of they saw me as like an outsider. So I was kind of like lost in translation in my own home. I couldn't fit in, and when I couldn't fit in, that's when I realized I have become different. I thought I could fit in, just come back home after 25 years of being in overseas and just come and blend in. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It's not black and white, so there's something else I need to do. I know I have changed, but these people, they don't know that whether I've changed or not, or I was being cocky. They thought, oh, this guy just graduated from University of Hawaii, he talks different, he doesn't act like a local and all this. And so, and I went through a period of unhappy time in my teaching career in that particular college, but I tolerated all of that because they were my colleagues, and we worked together. So I would always be a professional, okay? Even with that big guy, yeah, and I just realized later on, after 7 years, that most of the things he said to me were lies. He was always lying to me, and I was believing the lies. Yeah, it was creating a falsity, an illusion that, yeah, I do accept you, I understand you, but in fact he didn't. That's what he said, but that wasn't who he was. So I had to write about this. That's my very close colleague who became very close friend. So he told me, it's okay, bro, just write it. So I always checked with this friend, is it okay if I write about this? Is it okay to write about this gossip? No, write everything, even about me, just go ahead. But just don't mention this, yeah? And don't mention that. And so I fictionalized the names, of course, and the places, because they were very close to me. I'm sure they're going to read this. If this book reaches Malaysia, definitely they're going to read, and so they know who is who that I'm talking about, if they're still there. So when I was studying memoirs, I read so many memoirs during my literature days at the University of Hawaii. I read a lot of literature, and the ability, as you asked, how I could balance that out, is because I was studying literature, I was studying fiction, but I couldn't tell they were fiction because they were so real. Like when you studied Ernest Hemingway or William Faulkner writing on the stream of consciousness and The Rose for Emily, and it was so real to me, as though I was looking at myself in a mirror. So then I was asking myself, if these literary giants could do something like that, maybe I can also someday write like that, like them. then I had to find my voice. Okay, I cannot copycat some other writers and all that. Of course, my favorite was William Faulkner, because my writing style is more like William Faulkner's writing style, in a stream of consciousness, or like reading Rainer Maria Rilke, a very contemplative poem. And so when I took poetry classes, I used to study him, Maria Rilke, a lot. And so it sort of resonated with my own style of writing and way of thinking and so on. So I was actually exploring. Yes, I was writing this rigorously because I wanted to complete the manuscript as soon as possible, because I needed to tell the story. As Dr. Simpson told me, just tell the story. Don't complain. Don't vent. Just tell the story. So I had to tell the story. So as I was writing, I didn't realize, sort of unconsciously, all the literature, the skills I had acquired when I took my literature classes at the University of Hawaii, they sort of they got ingrained in my mind, the skills, because I was studying them so much. I was analyzing them. Why Hamlet? Why did he say this? Why did he say, I see my father Horatio, and where my lord, and in my mind's eye. So I thought he was really seeing the father, but he's seeing so was he insane? Was he delusional? Or was he imagining? Or was it really that the ghost was really there? So I was sort of there in that situation. As though someone was talking to me, right there. And I used to talk to myself, and when people pass by, then I shut up. So I was in that stage. So I was exploring, but that exploration became a part of writing. I became part of the exploration. So I wasn't like consciously doing this. Oh no, I'm going to fictionalize this. Or this one I got to be very realistic. I'm going to say this very overtly, openly. This one I got to be explicit. No, it just flowed out of me. Exactly. So I would say all my gurus have, from the inspiration I received from my literary gurus, I guess their voices blended with my own voice at some point. Yeah. Yes, Doctor.
With regard to the fact that you felt that you are alone in a very specific sense, that the gossip mongers and the people who are telling you something, but they are somebody else. So, this does this have anything to do with feeling marginalized as a part of a minority population? Like we have writers who have talked about their minority experience of being marginalized. Like you have all the black writers, Richard Wright, Black Boy, and you have Toni Morrison's, all her novels, Alice Walker, you have W.E.B. Du Bois, and so many others. Yes. I mean, does this have something to do with, because you seem to inhabit a kind of third space, what Homi Bhabha has said. Third space, that, the Homi Bhabha's concept, location of culture, right. That you are, it has nothing to do with binaries, as she rightly pointed out, nothing to do with black and white, insider, outsider. It's a kind of in-between no man's land that you occupy. Yes. So, yeah.
Also, I'd like to add to the, when you said you felt like the otherization, I think at some point we all have felt like the other. I'm in politics, sometimes you're not Bengali enough, sometimes you're not, Muslim enough, or sometimes you're not this enough, or, you're never enough, or you okay. So, the point is, you are enough. Sometimes you have to remind yourself. So during, what happens, when you're fighting an election, sometimes people say, no, but in the way that you're different, it is actually a USP. So when you, were talking about how you were kind of, bullied by your colleagues or whatever, because you were different and you were being othered, and this whole gossip and the cancel culture and all that. We all have been part of the cancel culture. The idea is, I believe, you have to be better than the best. When you realize that you're being bullied, you have to rise above the occasion and show them that I might not be by genes, genetically, I might not be Malaysian or whatever it might be, but I'm as Malaysian as you are, because I've spent the greater part, I've made Malaysia my home, or I've made ABC my home. I think that is, when you realize that belonging is not about what others think, is about where you feel more comfortable in. Where is home? Home is, I think, where your heart
happens.
Where your heart.
So if your heart is in Malaysia, that's your home. If your home, if you feel your heart is in Kolkata, Kolkata is your home, I think.
So Agha Shahid Ali, the half-inch Himalayas in my hand, this is the closest I'll ever be home. So,
I think right now, home is Kolkata for me.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
At this moment, after having this phenomenal experience today, it's going to be so memorable, and and it's going to stay with me like that. Doctor, to your question, the marginalized, basically marginalized, not in that very radical sense, but I mean, outside of college, I was fine. Everybody else was okay with me. So there was always an irony in my relationship with people, And I used to tell myself, oh, I'm a sociable guy, I'm down to earth. I can just mingle around with anybody. I was living in Taiwan and I just blended into their culture. I became a Chinese. I spoke Chinese better than Chinese, and they accepted me. But then, of course, at a few years later, you begin to realize that you're always going to be the ugly duckling, I'm always going to be this, but deep inside, in the core, the voice, there's a voice there telling you, you are a Malaysian, you are an Indian, and someday you return home as, Adeline Yanma said, Shu ye kui ken in Chinese. That means fallen leaves return to their roots. No matter how long I live in Taiwan and speak the language and all that, at some point I'm going to break down and feel this isolation and loneliness. So I came back home and I thought everything was going to be okay. But then I had to relearn everything that I had learned before. Sort of unlearn and relearn. So I was trying to find myself in the process, and I was trying to make friends with them. That's all. Just wanted to make friends with them and talk to them and chit-chat, but they couldn't really relate to me on my level. So that's when I realized that maybe my experiences has shaped my consciousness and my behavior. So it just comes out unconsciously, and they take it as though I was being, showy and cocky and all that. But because they never left that comfort zone. They have never left their comfort zone. So when a frog is inside the well, whatever circumference the frog stays on top of it, that's the world to the frog. But I came out of it and I saw the world at a very young age too. So they were sort of like, what they will do is they used to patronize and gossip behind my back. Oh, he thinks he's such a great teacher. All the students greet him, and they would greet me, good morning, sir, how are you doing? And I would, then the department head said to one lecturer, how come they always greet Mr. Loga and not, then she said to this one lecturer, how many times do you stop and greet the students? He does it every single day.
And that shut him up.
And completely shut him up. So you have to give in order to receive. You not just sit there and feel like some hotshot PhD there and I'm a big time lecturer. They have this idea. But what are you really doing in the classroom? Are you creating a relationship? Are you, because teaching implies relationship. You're talking to a human mind, not to the whiteboard, So I went in there and I sort of like revolutionized the style of teaching English. I said, forget about all the traditional, learning style and approaches you acquired in school. Here we're just going to talk about it. Let's enter into the communicative approach of teaching. Talk about yourself, tell me, and so top-down approach. So I was playing with all these different, ESL theories. A theory, until it is applied, it'll just stay inside the book. It'll stay as a literature. But the application, that's what makes the difference. So the other lecturers, and I wasn't, I had this hard time inside emotionally. They weren't like, going outright, trying to bully me or anything like that. But they were just like, they would talk among themselves, and they're like, yeah, he's trying to be showy. So great sarcasm, a lot of sarcasm there, in all this. And so that was going on. They're not talking directly to you, but indirectly, they are referring to you. So I had to go through all of that. And my teaching, when I excelled in the teaching over there, and the students, they loved me, my classes, and I was doing all these different English events, English quiz contest and the Can I Help You, this program and all that, and they would just like pass by and, yeah, right, this sort of, they were giving me attitude, basically, like in the USA, you got attitude. So that's what was going on. But on a larger scale, of course, when I came out in a society, there was no marginalization or anything like that. Yeah.
I'd like to say something about your reading fiction and finding it very real. So this is very interesting. I had already mentioned earlier that you've created a new genre in which you write real, documentary as it were, but it has a fictive quality. It sounds like fiction. But now I'd like to say that apart from that, there are always 2 or 3 ways of looking at things. And the way you write sort of opens up those perspectives. She talked of polyphony. I would say there's a multiplicity of perspectives also. Like Frost's famous poem, Fire and Ice. He says, some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it were to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and will suffice. So a brilliant poem. The meter, of course, it is end rhymes are brilliant. But more than that, there are so many ways of destroying the world. There are also so many ways of discovering the world. On the one hand, there is the reality. And the other hand, there is the illusion. Sometimes what we have is the reality of illusion. The illusion becomes very real, as Pirandello shows in his plays, like 6 characters in search of an author and Henry IV and all that. So in your writing, it is also real, but you have the ability to tell me that it could have been different. It would have been different had I. There is that if very strongly there, and that also contributes to the genre. And this is something which I think is a plus point of this.
Okay, no, you go ahead and then are you sure? Okay. So Loga, again, taking the ball from Ashok, from his court, I'll just put it in your court and I'll tell you all a little story. In the past, about 20 years ago, when Sunny Mehta, who was the editor of Random House, and a few of us were sitting with him in Singapore, he'd come to visit, he was telling us the story about Toni Morrison, the author of Beloved, the Nobel Prize winner, signing a contract with Random House on a chocolate wrapper. From that, the conversation moved to, and I think this is important for our discussion today because we have with us a new debut writer and we have a fairly newish, very avant-garde, very progressive publisher in Dr. Shudipto and in Unjita. The point that he made was more and more publishers who have the power, who are discovering new writers, are pushing the envelope and saying, oh, no. Even if you're diasporic and you're living in Toronto, you're living in New York, you're living in LA, I want some real, drama from you, maybe from Haiti, or you can give me something from Colombia, from the slums of Bombay. We want the novels to be sexy, inverted commas. Now, I think the sexiness of this book is not just to make it exotic. In fact, it is just the opposite. It is finding the truth, not manufacturing it. And it is a way in which it is accessible to student and teacher. And this is where I think, Loga, a very small suggestion, when you write your second book, don't change that. Give honesty its place. And I think there's nothing better. And the reader's not stupid. today's reader, my class, my MA class, salam, because they know when you are pretending and they know when it's true.
In fact, when you write about your illness and all that, and when you were not recovering, you do it in graphic detail, the mucus in your nose, these are the phrases that you use, and how you were in hospital, and how your health was all right, and then what happened, how did it go all to pieces. You describe it so graphically that touches you. And that's what I think Julie is saying, that honesty, you actually feel the pain, which is so palpable. I feel your pain. That is something which is very, very important.
Yeah, I think the truth that we want to hear through literature, I think it also opens a lot of doors in terms of cultural inclusivity, because nowadays we can hear more voices from different cultures, from different age, across different sexes, and also different, countries and continents. So that is what we are actually trying to, the thing that we are bringing more voices in literature, and we are including more and more perspectives. That's a win, I think, for literature today and for people reading and writing literature. So yeah, I was just going to ask one question to Professor Vishwanathan, and I think this is an open question. I want perspectives from all the esteemed panelists, rather, that we see that, as we have already discussed, that memoirs give us an open space. So who do you think takes the center stage in a memoir? Is it the person whose story we are going through, whose story we are learning, or the journey? Because without the journey, the person would not have been the same.
I would say the experiences of the person. You see, the person is the instrument through which we come to learn of what he endured. And through that we learn about ourselves, because we see ourselves in his experiences. And we compare. And we do that consciously or unconsciously. And maybe this would be a new theory which is somewhat Jungian, but a little different, the so-called collective unconscious. And here, unconsciously, you might feel that, oh, that's where I lost out. And he's put his finger on the spot. He's just nailed it there. So I think we're interested, certainly, in the protagonist, but more than the protagonist, what is coming out from the protagonist, where the protagonist is moving. Because as Roland Barthes said, after all, the author is dead. After a point of time, you become a sight.
It's the reader.
Yes.
But I just want to add something to that, to Ashok's point. And that is, when you are talking about a memoir or an autobiography, Leonard Woolf, who's often forgotten, said it beautifully. You would know, Chandra, where he said it's the journey and not the arrival that matters. So it is the journey. Yeah. And going back to your point, that is where I think it's so important that they both correlate. Where you said, with unabashed truthfulness, and this was, if I'm not mistaken, yes, Stuart Hall, who said, it is not to become, it is becoming. So it's never fulfilled.
This relates to what all of us have been saying, that it's a self-exploratory journey. You talk at various points about your existential angst. You are absolutely caught up in a dark world. It's like a Sartrean no exit situation. But at the same time, though the individual chapters and even the closure of your novel, you have to end somewhere because it's to do with words. So your meta-narrative comes to an end. It's not one story, but many stories. At the end of it, it is structurally closed, but thematically open to many, many interpretations, which is why at the center, as Ashokda said, and ma'am also said, and you said so beautifully, your second point, that it is not about binaries. It's about the unraveling of the self, where we are discovering many selves. It's like what Marlowe said about Lord Jim in Conrad's Lord Jim. He is one of us. Do not mistake, he is one of us, and we are one of you in that sense of the term. And the reader response says that the readers are participants in the whole process of your creation, because we identify at some point or the other what is happening to you. It has happened to us, maybe we have not spoken, but you have spoken and written about it.
Like that happened. So ultimately I will feel very good to know what are the changes you felt while writing it, and after you finished it, and right now you are sitting over here, so what are the changes you felt?
Okay, so I started keeping that personal journal starting from 2020 when I came back home, and I started to recover by leaps and bounds, step by step. It's almost like someone is high on ecstasy or methamphetamine. It takes 48 hours or something like that for him to become sober and sane, because a drug addict behaves like an insane person. And so, but it took me 2 years and another year of recovery, staying home, and started doing the gardening and things I did before, sort of unconsciously, but now I had to consciously do it. And even to pick up a book to read, it was a bit laborious at first. And to take up a student and start teaching, and it was like I had to relearn. I had to, as though I was doing it for the first time. So there was a block there, and it took some time for me to completely come to that fundamental clarity. So I still hadn't come to the clarity yet. So I realized this burden, I was carrying this burden that was tormenting me, and there was existential angst, as Dr. Biswas mentioned. Yes, and again searching for an identity, because I lost that identity. So I needed to find that identity, and the only way I could do that is through writing. Because this experience started at the University of Hawaii, that I always, when I was in pain or in some kind of ordeal, the writing liberated me. You see, when I had to talk to myself, and that lonesomeness, and had a great impact on my transformation. So that personal journal, so I started writing just for myself, and only to make sense of what happened to me. As I said earlier, I thought I knew this big guy, supposedly a friend, and was going to help me, get the business going, the motivational business, and make a difference in my life and so on. But none of what he said came true. I realized that everything that I did it on my own. I didn't need that guy. But he sort of indoctrinated me into his ideas and opinions and philosophy. Even a small dressing, he would say, bro, I think you should get this shirt. I think you dress up like that will look. So he sort of had some complete control over me. So when I was, during the recovery period, I kept the journal, and I was writing and trying to make sense of what I started to recall. I started to recall every detail, every little bits and pieces of those experiences. So I started keeping a journal, and actually the contents I was posting on Facebook and all that, and I was sending to my students, because this question, this very prevalent question everybody was asking, my former colleagues and students and friends, what happened to Loga? So I had this obligation. Some were genuinely, they were crying to see such a man, a teacher, so like walking around so noble, dignified, and now he's like roaming around the streets, loitering like a vagabond, and standing at every nook and corner, boozing, and sometimes lying on the bench, and and it was too painful for them. It was torturous for them. So this question, they were asking everybody, what happened to Loga, including the former colleagues. So they were so pitiful. They were looking at me like, oh, there's such a pitiful. But inside of me, there was this anger, this, that I didn't want anybody to feel pity for me, because I'm a fighter. I just didn't know how to get out of it. I needed help. some transcendental help from the divine, or so I needed something like that. Not ordinary. The psychiatrists couldn't do anything. They put me on lorazepam, Xanax, and just drugs after drugs after drugs. I was just taking too many drugs, and all they did just knock me out and put me to sleep. When I wake up, I'm back to normal. I get up and I just walk out the door and loitering the streets. So, and I thought I was answering the question. So individually, I was sending messages to my students and former colleagues and telling them, this guy did this to me. This what happened to me. Oh, yes. That's really that guy. I didn't know he was such a monster. During my time in the college, I didn't know he was such a monster. So I'm really sorry so that's all they could do for me. I'm really sorry this happened to you. So then when Bill, Dr. Simpson read all these postings, and he said that, that's when he said that I think you should write and tell people your story. Nothing but the story. Not this venting, words, just words coming out of emotion, anger. No. Write yourself out into the bigger Loga. That's what I want to see. So that motivation, that was the metamorphosis that produced this art. I answered your question?
Any other question? Yeah.
Yes, Sampurna. Yes, Sampurna.
So we all heard so many incidents from your book, right? So in literature we have the term hammer, the downfall, right?
Like it's a Shakespearean term.
Exactly.
It's a Greek term.
It's a Greek
Right,
term. It's a Greek term. Yes.
The biggest flaw.
Exactly.
Flaw is the fatal flaw.
Exactly. So now, if we talk about this book, I would like to ask Madam Chandrima, since Chandrani, my fault. So since you rightly pointed out about the diasporic literature here, right, that being other, that is the main focus here. So how do you think that being other, we know that Hamartia is a different thing, but here somehow, can we relate to the incidents, and then this being other affects and brings or assists to the Hamartia of the personality of an individual? Does it do that? I mean, does it affects the individual and the personality of...
There's no hamartia as such, because hamartia means a fatal flaw, right? So what he is saying is, because in Shakespeare, it talks about how, the protagonist had this downfall because of a certain hamartia, right?
Usually, it's hubris.
It's hubris.
It's pride.
Yes,
Right.
it's self-pride.
So here it's more about the redeeming of a man who's seen a large life with the pits and the happy highs and living lows. So I don't think we can pinpoint this phase of your life was your fatal downfall or that. So I think though it's a very interesting perspective, but in this context, I think we could use probably a better term.
Can I just...
I'll just intervene a little. More than hamartia, I think that it is the inability to read a person correctly which led to it. I'm reminded of Pinter's The Servant. It's macabre, becomes a monster, and the real person, he disappears and the servant takes over. So it's like that. So it's the inability to read person. We can't always find out what a person is like. We make mistakes all the time. We don't know ourselves, isn't it? The Gita tells us that the first thing you need to know is know thyself. We don't even know ourselves. How do we expect ourselves to know others? So that is the problem. But that he came out of it, that he found out, that is the main point of the book.
Yeah, so...
If I may add, Loga, what impressed me as a reader, just as a reader, there are hundreds and thousands of people who either fall into drugs, fall into evil companionship, into all kinds of destructive modes. But how many of them come out of it and with their own impulse, with their own incentive? That is what makes this story so special.
Since you asked the question to me, it as all the esteemed panelists have pointed out, because that is an Aristotelian concept, which is, and also later developed by Shakespeare, who said character is destiny. Now, it's applicable in a different theoretical perspective, but there is no hamartia in the true sense of the term in the narrative, because we are not talking about, and it's not, there's no such fatal flaw, because fatal flaw makes a tragic protagonist to make an error of judgment, and there's peripety, and then you have anagnorisis and all the whole journey. But he is tracing the moment of transcendence rather than the entire tragic process. So redemption, as has beautifully been pointed out, redemption, transcendence, an inability to interpret others. So it's a myopia, interpretative myopia. Reading something which is not there, reading things wrongly, and then coming to an understanding. Right? So, thank you.
You know, that is very natural. In fact, I'll once again go back to Pinter. Michael Billington, in his biography of Pinter, he says that we are surrounded by a tissue of lies. We are believing the lies. It's happening in the country today. Sarah would know, at the center and the state, we are believing the lie, as we did when Adolf Hitler came to power. We are believing the lie, so it's all the more.
You repeat a lie 1,000 times and it becomes a truth. It's a global thing. It happened during the Nazi regime, right? So you know who the present Goebbels is, you know, who were like...
I think the discussion is at the peak at the moment, but unfortunately we are also drawing towards the, yeah, one more question from the audience. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you give him the mic? Please introduce yourself.
Yes. Sir, actually I am an enthusiast reader, and first of all, congratulations to you, sir. And a very heartfelt congratulations to all of you for being present. And sir, I just wanted to ask you only one question, actually two questions. One, sir, you have been through a lot of problems, issues, but you have come out as a winner, right? So what is one advice you will give to young people who are actually intoxicated in drugs or in other serious problems? One advice. And sir, when you were writing this book, your journey, did you felt even once that you should discontinue for any reason, or you got demotivated or something like that?
I'm not good with two questions at the same time. So your first question is, what advice I have? Focus, follow your heart. If you have the will to live, to push on, to move on, there will be a way. Because I always believed, deep inside, but maybe because of that spiritual upbringing when I was during my teenage life in the Hare Krishna, because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, my devotee will never perish. So I will never perish. And so some little tiny spark inside of me, even when I was holding that handful of lorazepam, if I had popped all the pills, I would have slept forever. And I was just holding on. Should I take them? Should I put them back in the bottle? So I was going through this existential crisis and that moment. But something, that's when I realized that there's something beyond me. I didn't orchestrate all this. I am not the orchestrator. I am not this body. So everything I studied during my life in the Hare Krishna movement and the Bhagavad Gita, it was like staring at my face. I had to go through, if I had to go through this horrible experience to come to that self-realization, then so be it. That's what everybody did. It served its purpose. It served its purpose. So if I had not gone through the experiences, sleeping on the streets, loitering around, boozing, and taking all these hurtful words from passers-by and all that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you and with all these wonderful scholars. So everything happens for a reason. So never give up. You don't own this life. Yeah? In the Tao Te Ching, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lao Tzu says contentment is wealth. What is true wealth? Today, sitting here and having this discussion, this is wealth to me. So I'm more than happy. I'm just in a sense of exuberance that I'm so grateful to have traveled 1,600 miles from home to be here. And so everything happens for a reason. I didn't orchestrate all this honor, and so when you are in that situation, just hang on to that belief, and not just belief, because belief can be broken without understanding. Your belief will be shaken. Okay, you can say, I believe in Bhagavad Gita, but do you understand it? There's a difference, yeah? So know that there is a way. There's some higher power beyond us watching over us. He's not deaf. He knows you. He's putting you through the drama for a reason. So what you can learn from that experience, if you change your attitude, you change your destiny. Okay, thank you.
I'll just give one sentence. Couldn't resist this since you talked of the Hare Krishna movement. I mean, the Hindu concept of Maya, that the world is indeed an illusion, actually. It is Vishnu's Leela. So
Vishnu's cosmic dream.
we don't exist really. This is just an illusion. If you feel that, then you will see that you don't really lose out, even if the worst of tragedies, comes in front of you.
An illusion, and obviously we all believe this is a matrix only. So I want to ask a simple question, that is, do you feel resentment towards that person for whom you are sitting right here? No. Any resentment?
You're asking about the big guy. Yes. That's a very good question, and I was waiting for someone to ask me that question. Not anymore. Not anymore. You see, as I said, this is my liberation. Yeah? My moksha. Exactly. I said in Bhagavad Gita, my moksha. So, this man actually helped me to find myself, to find me. The uncle, the last shaman who actually did that exorcism to take up 30% of that this enchantment, that spell that was domineering my consciousness and everything about me. And when I recovered, he was the first person I went to see to interview him for this book. I went to ask him what he did for me, all the rituals and so on, and why he did, what was the incantation, all that they did. And so he looked at me, he said, "Brother, I cannot tell you how proud I am to see you now compared to when I saw you just a year ago. You didn't even know who you were. You were doing all these things, you were struggling, you were trying to fight me. You didn't want these rituals to take place and this floral bath and so on to cast off that evil spirit." And so during that time, I was very angry. I'm just an ordinary human being. I was holding on to this resentment and anger, exact opposite of everything that I learned in the Buddhist sutras or in the Bhagavad Gita. Give up your anger and all that. So like Buddha said, someone asked the Buddha, what do you gain from this meditation? He said, nothing. But I can tell you what I let go: anger, resentment, jealousy, vindictiveness, all the negative vices. So I wanted to, then I realized later, I was more angry at myself than this big guy, because he's no longer there. He's gone. So who am I really being angry at? It's myself. So that's when my mentor and friend, he found that out through my reading. He said, I could hear that tone. He's a writer too. So he said, I see that anger in there. So, right. So once I wrote that last word, and after that I felt such this transcendental bliss that I discovered myself. And that's just at that moment, a veil lifted and the burden sort of taken off from my shoulder, and this man was gone from my mind, because he actually helped me find myself. So as this uncle, the shaman uncle, said, that you have to thank him. I mean, not see him and thank him like that, of course, but in your heart, forgive. and move on and thank him. And your story, this is your light, your enlightenment, your reward, exactly. Okay.
What I can say is that person is also a kind of God only.
I wouldn't call him God or anything like that, but God sent to enlighten me, to help me come to terms with.
Lila only.
Yes.
This was cosmic dream only.
Yes, exactly. So when you ask me right now, at this moment, sitting here, if you ask me about how I think about this man, he's neither my friend nor my enemy, just another human soul. That's it. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah. Microphone? You want the microphone?
My name is Prabal Chattopadhyay. I am National Interest Achiever Record Holder, many contribution in India and abroad. I am also advisor, entrepreneur, author, spiritual, record many things. So I have attended many places, country. We are having many type of team also. So I want to know that what experience, expertise, knowledge you have gathered. It will for the benefit of society, for humanity, for the benefit of our culture, ancient heritage, all things. So do you think that you should reach what you have motivated you? It should be reached to persons, people also, so that they can also, who are suffering, they are also can overcome through your writing. Do you satisfied for this? You will get the session.
I think everyone earlier has already kind of touched on that, I think, because like you stumble on something, you read something you're not supposed to read, but then you gain something from there. So you don't limit yourself to one, reading a particular genre and all this. So your exact question is, can we
fulfill for the society also? It will be, you are satisfied that it will be beneficial for the society and
yes,
for mankind.
Of course, if you read something and it inspired you, and you see someone else having a parallel experience, going through some kind of dilemma and all that, definitely you're going to share that experience with that friend. You know, your friend is going through that experience, so you're going to share it. I read this book, and there is a way out. You're not alone. So don't give up. This human nature, you will share, you will inspire other people because you are inspired. You see, so knowledge is nothing until you share it with other people.
Because life is a learning process, and what experience, knowledge, skill you have gathered. After once person got all type of knowledge, then it goes to spirituality and motivational also for the benefit of others.
Absolutely, sir. You are quite right that life is a process, learning process, and it's a process of choosing to win every day.
Yes.
This is what Mr. Loga has done, and that is why he has become a triumphant person in his journey. So I think it's been an exhilarating experience, listening to all the different perspectives from all these distinguished speakers and panelists. And I would profusely thank to all of you, all the esteemed panelists and as well as the author, for bringing new perspective, a unique angle to this book. I deeply thank Mr. Loga Narayanasamy for writing a book with so much of honesty and depth and insight and courage at the same time. And to all of you, whether you are a writer or a reader or someone just seeking inspiration, I trust that this discussion has given you something meaningful to take away. So I do encourage you to grab a copy of this book and get it signed by the author and take the conversation today beyond this room. Please keep writing, keep reading, and keep inspiring each other. Thank you. Thanks for being a part of this evening today.